If you want to go ahead and get started, Dan, you can.
Sure, yes. Well, welcome. I think there's a few of us here, so thanks for joining us. I know everybody's very busy, so I am Dan Yatzek. I'm our Director of Financial Aid at Siena Heights University. I have been at Siena really all of my adult life. I started here in 2002 as a student. I've worked in a number of different departments here: athletics, admissions, and now financial aid. So I'm a lifer at Siena. Did my undergrad in psychology, went on to grad school here. So it's been home for a lot of years. I was originally born and raised in Morenci, so really far away from here. I made it really far as an adult, so a good 30 miles. But no, I love Siena. It's been a great place. So I have the privilege of kind of talking through the FAFSA. The FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. If it's your first time doing it, it can be a little overwhelming. Even if you've done it before, it's still overwhelming. It changes every year with what they're asking, what to use. So what I'll do is kind of just go through it step by step. If you have questions along the way, just ask. This is a nice group that we have here. I think Ms. Cole's going to monitor chat. If you want to put questions in the chat, that might be the best way. There we go. Perfect. Throw them there and we can answer them along the way. I believe we have approximately about an hour or so that we'll go through, but some of these slides, I'm going to share my screen. Some of these slides will be pretty self-explanatory. We don't need to spend much time, but if there are things where you're like, wait a minute, slow down, we can talk through, because some of them I'll hit on the common mistakes that we see each and every year on the FAFSA, especially do we have all parents here? Or do we have students? There's a combination. A lot of parents, in my experience, will initiate this process for their students. And so we just want to make sure that we're putting in accurate information. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Maybe. There we go. All right. Can everybody see? Let's see. We'll go ahead and make this a little bigger now. All right. How does that look? Good. All right. All right, so this is kind of a preview actually of what you're going to see when you actually log into the FAFSA. And I mean, actually exactly what you're going to see. All right, so these are presentation slides though, so a lot of it's just copied and pasted from the 23-24, hard to believe we're at that time, version of the FAFSA. So as of October 1st, so this past weekend, you can actually log in and complete the FAFSA for the upcoming year. And we would encourage you to do that sooner than later. The sooner you can get the FAFSAs completed, the colleges that your students are looking at attending, they'll be able to get that information and be able to offer you a comprehensive aid award much sooner in the process. So definitely after tonight, if you log on, get that done. Just highlighting some of the things that we're going to talk about. So as I just said, you can do that now. You can complete that. Anybody that's eligible, you can use what's called a data retrieval tool we'll talk about. They can view additional information this year on other schools and do a direct comparison right on the FAFSA, which is kind of cool, where you can compare some of the schools that you're looking at. And then you can easy access to log in, make corrections, all that. So here we go. So you're going to go to studentaid.gov. That's the website that you're going to use for this. And you'll log into this website, go to the link, and the first thing you're going to do is go to complete the FAFSA form under FAFSA form. So right up top on the left-hand side, you'll see that link. It drops down and you'll hit complete the FAFSA form. So this is where you are going to be new to the process for this FAFSA for your current seniors. So they will start here. They're going to click start here. We encourage students to do the FAFSA. We know parents are huge supporters in this process, and we see a lot of parents that maybe don't admit they do the FAFSA for their students, but we know they do. So that's not uncommon, but we do encourage students to be a big part of this process, especially what we see after year one where the parents aren't as involved. The students may be a little confused. So even if the parent, you're going to do it with them, we definitely encourage that. So once they click start here, they're going to say, I'm the student and I want to access this form. So even though you may be the parent, my strong advice is to have the student do it and click, I am the student doing this. If you fill it out as the parent and select that, it's a bigger process where the student then has to go back in, make updates, and you got two different kind of things going on. It can be a little confusing. I've seen it all. We've seen it where, the parent did the whole thing as the parent, thought they had everything done. The student got here and hadn't actually ever, logged into a FAFSA as a student. So we definitely encourage choose I am the student and I want to access the form. And then right here, if they have not created an FSA ID, so a federal student aid identification, that is what they're going to need to do first. Sometimes they work on those at the school. Sometimes they'll get emails to do that, but they definitely need to create that FSA ID. So they would click that link and it's going to take them out to create an account. This is the student information. And I want to make sure that's clear, because a lot of times the parent is going to put in their information here as the student. And that's what we want to avoid. We get a lot of mismatches between the student and the parent when it comes to FSA IDs. Once we get into processing, a majority of my time, whether I was in admissions or financial aid, is going in and correcting FSA IDs that the parents filled out as a student. So the student's going to want to put in their information here, and they'll go in and put that through. So, they'll have their name, date of birth, social security number. The social is what connects everything. So the social security number for the student here is how that links into any college's system that they're going to, apply to. If you put in a wrong social or a different social, put in your own social as a parent, those will never link the FAFSA to that student record. And then they're going to say, we don't have a FAFSA yet for you. And that's why. So the FSA ID, important that the student, puts in their personal identifiers as they're going through this information. So then they hit continue, and then they'll be able to actually log in immediately once they create that FSA ID and password. So now you're back on the FAFSA site. It will automatically prompt you to go back there once you create that FSA ID, and you're going to go ahead and click log in. So then it's going to take you to kind of the home page, the first page when you are starting your FAFSA application. This is for the 23-24 FAFSA form. You're going to see both the current year and the previous year listed when you log in, because we still have students that are doing the 22-23 FAFSA form, even though classes started back in late August. They can utilize that all the way up until the end of the academic year, up till May, that they can still file. So 23-24 form is what we're looking at for next year. All right. And if you're confused, there's a link. You can say, what year should I choose? And it'll tell you that. Save keys. You create one of these each time you log in. It doesn't have to be the same. I typically just do a simple 4-digit number like a PIN. And this is if you were to get kicked out or your computer shuts down or something happens, that save key will allow you to log back in where you left off and pick up where you kind of got kicked out of it. So it doesn't have to be anything crazy. I just use a pen usually that I'm familiar with and use that every time. All right. You'll first kind of get just a quick synopsis of some FAQs with the FAFSA. So you can look through those if you want as you get in there. It's not a requirement. You can go ahead and hit continue, but there is helpful information. The nice part about filing a FAFSA now, there's just an abundance of information out there that you can search if you have questions. Certainly there's resources being from, Lenawee County. You have, Siena Heights, Adrian College, and Jackson right here that can really help with these things as well. So for the small community of Lenawee County, we're very fortunate to have all these resources here when it comes to this. All right, so we're going to go over dependent student with parental data. I know there's several different ways this could go when you file a FAFSA, and I'll hit on a few of those. But for this example, we'll use that this is a dependent student, meaning that they are dependent of their parents, which would require them to have parent data as they file the FAFSA. All right. Important piece as you're looking at it. So it's got the kind of headers on the top, student demographics, school selection, and so on. Those are important to keep an eye on because, like I said, a lot of times this, as parents are helping with this, we'll say, they start to put in their own information here. So, and I say that several times already because it's so common that we have the parents putting in their information for the students. I had more married students this year than I've ever seen in my lifetime. So this is student information again, so they'll have their information, quick identifiers, things like that. With the email address, phone numbers, as they create their FSA IDs, they'll verify those. So if they forget them, you can reset them with either a text message or an email. Strongly encouraged to get those, the FSA, the email and the text message verified. Mailing addresses, all right, residency. So basically, this is a student. Have you lived in Michigan? Are you a U.S. citizen? You answer these accordingly. You're looking for 23-24 information, so you'll have a high school diploma, assuming that all of our our guests today are seniors in high school, and they'll be pursuing their first bachelor's degree and never have attended college. The last question there, are you interested in being considered for work study? You can put whatever you want there. It's a great opportunity if you have need when it comes to what the results of the FAFSA will be. Federal work study program is an opportunity for students to work on campus. It's a minimum wage job that they'll work anywhere up to 7 hours per week, and they earn income and it's paid to them. I have two that work for me, and sometimes, we'll have things to keep them busy. Other times they can work on homework. It's just a way to earn a little extra income while they're on, either on campus, or commuter students are open to that as well. If they're eligible for it, we do put that eligibility on their financial aid award. It doesn't mean they have to get a job. It just means they're able to go get a job. License, it's not required. You don't have to put a license number, but if they do have a driver's license, they can go ahead and put that there. Then just some questions about it, where if they were in foster youth or foster care, there's different aid programs there that might be available. So they're going to try to identify some of these things. And then education levels of parent 1 and parent 2, if parent 2 is going to be on the FAFSA, which we'll get into. So the school selection process, they're going to add Tecumseh here. So they would search by state, and then they would search by city, and then Tecumseh, and it would come up. They would select that, which would take them to the list here. It should be pretty narrow, being that there's not too many Tecumseh high schools around here. So they would select that information there and be on their way. At that point, they get into the college search portion of this. So two different ways you can add colleges to your FAFSA. You can search by state, go city, and then type in school names, and it should find them for you. Or you can find those colleges, what's called their school code. So each school has a federal code. Ours is listed there, the 002316. If you were to plug that into your FAFSA, it would automatically pull up Siena Heights University. All schools should have that code listed, but they make it pretty easy now just to search. So if you know the name of the colleges your students are looking into, you would just search them, and then you would go search, and it would pull them up here. You would select which college you're interested in, move on to the next page. It's going to say, are you planning to live on campus? Are you planning to live at home with parents, on your own? So you would just select accordingly. That's not binding you into anything. That's just trying to help identify, what your plans are, so the college can see that. But if you put on campus and you're like, no, we're actually going to commute, it's not a big deal at all. You can add up to, all the schools you're interested in, up to 10 schools. So you could add each and every school that your student's looking into just by clicking that add more schools button right there. And you would do that process over and over until you have the schools listed there. The order of that used to be relevant. It's not as relevant anymore. For state aid specifically, like the Michigan Tuition Grant or Michigan Competitive Scholarship, some of those state grants, you had to have your school listed first that you attended. That's a different process now, where the state of Michigan actually has their own portal that students go to and identify which school they're attending there, which we can, give some more information, and I'll work with your admissions counselor, Regina, to help you through that process too. All right, so then the dependency status question. So, the student will fill this out. This is the one the parents always put, they're married or remarried, and the student's not married or remarried, and we got to go in and fix. So still on the student here. Anytime that they refer to you or your, they're always talking about the student here. So student would indicate that if they're single or if they're married, whatever it may be, they would click, move forward. Do they have children? Do they have other dependents that they support? So the student still, this is going to be their answers. So if those are no, yes, whatever it may be, they're trying to determine with these questions the dependency status of a student. So a lot of these questions, that if they answer yes to them, it's going to automatically say, based on these answers, you are independent because you either have a child, you are in a legal guardianship, or you're emancipated, or you are military. Those are going to be automatic identifiers that the student is now independent, and we would, move forward without parent information. So depending on what these answers are, if they answer no to these, whether it be homeless youth, whatever it may be, unaccompanied minor, ward of the state, some of those things, if those are all no, and then they'll get to this to say, you are considered a dependent, therefore we need parent information. If you answer yes to any of those questions as a student, it will say, based on your answers, you are independent. At that point, we would kind of guide the student with what's needed in terms of documentation. So for this example, we're going to say this is a dependent student, and we do need to add parental information. You will see sometimes you don't have the parent information there. You can proceed without it. We'll just need to get it eventually. All right, so This kind of just goes through some basics of what we're going to provide here. Okay. When it comes to parent information, if depending on if you're married, remarried, divorced, separated, whatever that may be, will determine what information we need. This is where we do get a lot of questions about whose information should we put on the FAFSA, those types of things. We can get into some of that specific stuff if you have questions on that. So you would answer this accordingly. The student or the parent would help them with that if they're married or remarried, and then they would have that date that they got married or they got remarried. We see a lot of conflicts that we'll get into when it comes to parent marital status and parent tax filing status. So that's probably the number one hiccup we've seen the last couple of years in terms of those two things matching. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you're, married or remarried, but you filed divorce or separated as tax filing because you got remarried last year. And so what you're going to use for that, we'll talk about in a second. So then whatever parent or parents are going to be on the FAFSA, this is where parent demographics, number 4, you'll see at the top. This is where it's going to be your information as the parent. And so you'll keep an eye on that, and you'll go in as you filling it out now as the parent and put in your personal identifiers. Same thing if you're going to add parent 2, this is where their information would go. If you are married, remarried, both parents would need to be on there. So if it's married, you and your the child's, let's say, biological father, those two parents. If you're remarried, you and then the parents or the student's stepfather would actually be on the FAFSA, not their biological father, if they're living with you and your step parent. So that would be that information there. Where they've lived, if it's been in Michigan the last 5 years, you would indicate that. This is the question to determine how many dependents are in the household and how many total household members there are. So we have 1 or 2 parents now at this point. We have the student that is filling the FAFSA out. First one here is going to be how many other dependent children do you have as a parent? So you would answer that. So if I had my 3 siblings, that would be me plus 2 there or 3 for my 3 siblings. The next question there, we got 10-minute warning. Okay. All right. So the next question there would be how many other dependents. So if there's other people in the household that you support, maybe a grandparent, things like that, you could indicate that there. We just might need documentation of how you support them financially, whatever it may be. All right. Just talked about that, household size information. So the parent's tax filing status, this is going to be for 2021. They always use what they call prior years. So it's 2 years back. All right. So 2021 financial information. So if you filed your tax returns, you would indicate that you already completed them and how you filed them. Like I said, sometimes we get some conflicts here with I filed married or separated and I'm not married or stuff. So just keep an eye on that. The IRS data retrieval tool is a great resource. It's a great option to choose. So you just, if you are eligible for this, most people are, you can proceed to the IRS and it'll actually allow you to go out and link your tax return from 2021 and auto fill in the FAFSA for you with all that information. So I would encourage you proceed to the IRS if possible, use that data retrieval tool or the DRT, put in the information, let it link there.
Dan, I have a quick question. I know a parent earlier this week had asked, he had said that he was trying to use the IRS data retrieval tool and they kept on, every time that he thought that they were linking it, it kept on kicking him back out and kind of starting back over. Have you encountered that problem at all? Yeah,
we've seen some issues with the actual website. Okay. A couple of tricks we've worked through. Different browsers. Sometimes Chrome has not been working. So a different browser. There are legitimate reasons why some people can't use the data retrieval tool. I'm one of them. My identity was stolen years back. And so I can't link my taxes until next year. I think it's finally up where I can actually do those things. So if you've ever been a victim of identity theft or there's other reasons, but if it's an error like that, it's usually something with the browser. So I would try Silk or try some other browser that might work. It's usually something with their server, especially this time of year. It's very bogged down with people trying to do FAFSAs. So that's one thing first step we take is try a different browser and see if that works for you. If it's saying you're unable to use it and it gives you an error message that you can't use it, then you would proceed kind of how we're going to do next. And you would actually go in, put in your information using your 1040 or your estimates with the estimators there that you can use for that information from 2021, like your AGI, how much did you earn from working wages, those types of things. They tell you which lines on your returns to look at, so you can put that right in there. File through, did you do a Schedule 1? It'll ask these questions. You just answer them accordingly. You can skip these questions for remaining questions about assets. I'd encourage you just to go ahead and do them. They're not too complicated. As you look at let's see if we can get to it here. This is just going to be special questions for parents as tax filers, like combat pay, things like that. Go through, answer them accordingly. All right. Child support. This is where you would enter any child support received, paid, things like that. So you'd have that information. I want to get to this. So this is another common mistake we see is the assets portion of this, specifically the third question there. What's the net worth of current business or investment farms, things like that. Assets include, you can hover over as you're filling it out and actually tell you this information on the right hand side of what to include. A lot of people include their house, and that's where we see a lot of mistakes. We can't go in and tell you something looks wrong to us when we review FAFSAs. So if there's a large number in that asset section, we can't say that's right or wrong, but we just encourage people to double check if they think something might look off, to go in and review those things and then identify truly what assets they should include in that section. Does that make sense? All right. Students, if they file taxes, if they earned income and are required to file taxes, same exact process. If they worked but didn't file taxes, we just need W-2 information at that point. All right, so same thing, they can use the data retrieval tool as well if they filed taxes, and they would do the exact same thing. So I'll kind of fly through those. All right. When you get to this section, it's going to say you're almost there, but not quite. And this is where we see a lot of people get to this point and don't finish it completely. So, all right, we're almost out of time. All right, so you'll get to the end.
I'm trying to update it right now, so I think we're good now.
All right. So you'll get to the end. It'll give you a review of everything, kind of what you just did. It'll have all that information listed out for you, so you can go through, review it, make sure everything looks good. You didn't add an extra 0 to an AGI or something like that. And then it's going to take you to the end where it's going to say, all right, this is new this year. This is an optional, it's not required, an optional survey to pull some demographic information. So you can either skip that or you can fill that out. It's up to you. And then you'll get to this section of the student saying, yes, I agree to these terms, and hitting continue. And then you're going to get to the signature page. We see a lot of issues with the signature page each and every year where students forget to sign or parent forgets to sign. So the student will be logged in with their FSA ID and password already. Their signature, that's what your signature is. It's your FSA ID and password. And so you would want to hit sign electronically with my FSA ID as a student. You would do that. They're already logged in, so they would just hit sign, and then that would be it. Now the parent would do the same thing. If you linked your taxes using the data retrieval tool, you will be logged in as well. So then as the parent, you can just hit sign. If you're not logged in, if you didn't use the data retrieval tool, you would get to that section as parent 1 or parent 2, and then you would go ahead and sign using your FSA ID and password, because like we said at the beginning, the student has their FSA ID and password. You as the parent create your own FSA ID and password. So when we're back at slide 3 or 4 that we were on with logging in, you're going to do the same thing as the parent. You're going to create your own FSA ID and password with your name, date of birth, your social security number. You will use that to sign the FAFSA. You will not use that to log into the FAFSA. The student will use theirs. That's the common, we see that all the time. So parent 1, parent 2, you both can have FSA ID and passwords. We just need one of them to sign the FAFSA. All right, so you get to that section. This is where you're signing, agreeing, same thing. And then you would enter your information there, FSA ID and password for the parent, and you would sign this FAFSA form, and then that would be it. If you're having trouble or sometimes you can't sign electronically, there is a FAFSA signature page that can be printed, and you can bring that into us, and we can actually send that into the Department of Education, federal student aid, and we can take care of that for you. Doesn't happen often, but we do see it every year where certain students or parents are unable to sign electronically. So if that does happen, just let us know, or whichever colleges you're looking into. And like I said, being local, we're a resource to all students, whether they're interested in coming to Siena Heights or not. we can help with that process. At that point, we get to the end where you cannot forget to hit the last button, which is submit my FAFSA. A lot of times you'll get to that signatures, do that, and then forget to hit submit. So that submit button, just say process your FAFSA, and you will get an immediate congratulations email as a student, as well as a confirmation email to the email on file. I would encourage your students not to use their Tecumseh email address, to use an alternative email address when doing this, because once they graduate, that Tecumseh email address will no longer be available for them at some point. So use a Gmail or whatever it is that they might have, or create a new one to do this FAFSA. So they'll get that confirmation email. It will actually indicate at this point too what your expected family contribution is. We call that the EFC. That helps determine federal aid eligibility. So things like federal Pell Grant, Supplemental Educational Outcomes Grant, which is another federal grant, the loan breakdown between the subsidized loans and the unsubsidized loans. As first-time freshmen, every student is eligible for $5,500 in guaranteed student loans by submitting their FAFSA. That's the freshman level. That breakdown is dependent on that expected family contribution. A typical breakdown is $3,500 in subsidized loans and $2,000 in unsubsidized loans. But that does shift as the need is met based on the FAFSA. All right, so it'll tell you that information on that summary page, that congratulations page as well. And that's where it'll tell you up to 72 hours. This information will be sent to the colleges that you listed for them to go ahead and pull into their systems. Each college is a little different on when they do that. October 1st, you can file, and that information will be out on the federal side. There's a lot of steps institutionally that colleges have to take in order to be prepared to start issuing comprehensive aid awards, like establishing cost of attendance, things like that. So we may use this data that we get to put out an estimated award until we're able to put official awards out together. And at Siena, you would work very closely with your admissions counselor on that information. That was a very quick run through. All right, so once the FAFSA for most schools, once the FAFSA comes through, then they will not only evaluate federal aid eligibility based on that, that will allow them to review other aid options as well. So I just list a few, that schools like Siena Heights, most small private schools offer some type of academic scholarships, arts scholarships, athletic scholarships, whatever it may be. Those will also, the FAFSA allows us to then identify some of these as well that you could, be eligible for, whether it's merit-based or other, so there's a very quick rundown of the FAFSA. What kind of questions do we have? I'm a very casual person, so you can feel free to type them, or there's only a few of us on here, so.
Yeah, there's only a few. So if you guys want to unmute yourself and ask, feel free to, or you can type them in, it doesn't matter.
My information is here as well that you can take down. Like I said, I've been around a while here at Siena, but I worked Lenawee County as an admissions counselor for a few years and other counties as well. And yeah, we're here to help. I mean, that's the most important thing, is that when you do have questions or it does become overwhelming, just ask, whether it's us or whether it's another college. That's, the resources are out there for you. And there's an abundance of resources online as well. Our website, we put out a few links for, things similar to what you saw today in terms of this presentation, but also like Nitro College will give you a step-by-step kind of a layman's term breakdown of the FAFSA. There's videos out there that you can watch that highlight these same exact slides. So there's a lot of information out there, and in this day and age, it's easy to access. Any questions right now? Nothing?
Nothing.
Must have been that thorough, I guess.
Yeah, you did a great job. Look at that. That's what I always say. I'm like, really? Nothing? I covered everything there was. And, if you guys happen, any of your parents happen to have a question that pops up maybe later, or when you're actually sitting down and working through this, don't hesitate to either email Dan, or even if your kid's not going to Siena, he has graciously offered to help us through this, because I'm not a financial aid expert. You're welcome to email him with any questions, or you can email me and I can reach out to Dan. and say, hey, we've
Yeah.
already encountered this. Can you help walk us through this? We're happy to help.
Yeah. So this is like step one, usually getting FAFSA done. There's going to be a lot of things that come after that in terms of, you know, things that might come up in terms like you may be selected for verification, which is a random selection that the federal government does to 1 out of 3 students. We've been able to waive that the last 2 years because of the pandemic, and we're really pushing the waivers again. Oh, we got a new guest. Look at that. So if those things come up where you have to, submit additional documentation, you may need to provide, if you don't link your taxes, you may be asked to provide a tax return transcript or your tax return, your 1040, whatever it may be. A big one this year that, a lot of students were selected for identity verification. So we would actually have to have them come in and sign with their ID that this is them because of a lot of identities being stolen. If you don't do that in person, you have to do it with a public notary. So some of the things can get complicated, and we're here to help with those things. 2021 was, a couple of years ago almost. So sometimes your situation has changed financially since 2021. If that is the case and you're thinking, yeah, we made a lot more money in 2021. I don't make nearly that amount now and we can't afford this. And talk to your financial aid offices about that. There is something called a professional judgment, and it's a way that we can review circumstances that may have occurred, like maybe you were laid off from a job due to the pandemic or things like that. So we know those things happen, and if that is the case, we can send you the documents you need to fill out and try to take those things into consideration and try to get some more financial aid. There's just all sorts of fun things the federal government will throw at you during this process once you submit the FAFSA. So just be ready for those things and ask a lot of questions. If there's things that are unanswered, get them answered. Like I said, that's the job of the colleges and universities that your students are looking at, is to really guide you through this process and respond to those questions and make this as smooth as possible for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dan, for your time. I appreciate it. We will be sending this out to parents as a follow-up just in case they weren't able to make it, but still wanted to reach out. And then obviously we encourage anybody else that can either reach out to me or reach out to you. And hopefully we've covered most of the basics.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining. We appreciate it.
Thank you.